Hello, welcome to my last weekly video of the year before Christmas, and I just want to spend a little time explaining the votes in Parliament on Tuesday evening about the latest COVID regulations. Now, we actually had 4 issues we were voting on last night. The first was on extending mandatory mask wearing in certain public places. I'm quite relaxed about that. I've been continuing to wear a mask on public transport in shops anyway, and frankly I think it's just something that people should do out of consideration, particularly to more vulnerable people who've been worried about venturing out if people aren't wearing masks. I know there's a whole argument about whether they are really effective or not, but I think it's the right thing to do. I voted for that, that went through. Secondly, there was a proposition which we didn't vote on in the end because everybody agreed that rather than having to quarantine if you come in contact with somebody, you can take tests instead, which seemed a much more effective thing to do. Then there were the 2 much more controversial things where I took a different view from the government. I've put my speech, we only got 3 minutes to speak, on Facebook, so you can see my reasoning there, and I've also put a posting on Facebook last week ahead of the debate. The first thing was on COVID passports. Now, COVID passports, there's a distinction between COVID passports and vaccine passports. With a COVID passport, in order to gain entry into certain places like nightclubs and outdoor matches, you would either have to have vaccination or be able to give a test result. With a vaccine passport, it's a vaccination or nothing. Now, I'm against mandatory medical interventions, and a vaccination is that. I absolutely urge everybody to go out and get your vaccination. From today, everybody over the age of 18 can go and get their booster as well. And I know a lot of queues, but it's worth getting it done because this new strain is very virulent. I just don't think it should be compulsory. It should be somebody's choice. So I voted against the measure which would make it compulsory for NHS workers to have had the full vaccinations, which is coming in March. I think that's going to cause huge practical problems. I voted against it when we brought in similar regulations for care workers, and that's resulted in up to 40,000 people leaving the care profession, although the government still hasn't given us the full figures. If we have anything like that impact on the National Health Service, where 1.5 million people work, that's going to have a serious problem on vacancies which are already high at the front line at a time when we need a fully staffed NHS to help us cope with COVID in any case. So that's why I voted against that. And on COVID passports, my fear is that this is regulation creep, and that actually what the government does want to bring in potentially is full vaccine passports, which I would oppose. So it was important that there were about 100 Conservative MPs last night who voted against that, took a stand. We need to be proportionate in all of this. This latest variant, the Omicron variant, is clearly much more virulent, but the evidence coming out of South Africa now suggests it's much less potent. And the important thing is keeping people from getting seriously ill and keeping them out of hospital, and obviously trying to avoid as many deaths as possible. And the hospitalisations and the death figures have kept very low despite the number of infections going up considerably. That's why I voted as I did, and I listened to the debate, I spoke in the debate, I've looked at all the evidence, and that's the view I took. Many people disagree with that, many people agree with that. These are difficult calls that the government's got to make, but they need to be proportionate. And if they are going to go further, it may be that Parliament will be recalled after we go into recess on Thursday. We could be recalled next week, because we need to be scrutinising these things to make sure they are proportionate. And there are other effects from all of this. The huge pressure on the NHS from non-COVID patients trying to play catch up to get their treatments. The huge impact that closing down schools, a big mistake which I will absolutely oppose again, had on the mental health and the socialising and the physical health of many of our kids as well. We need to look at this in the round, and that's why I voted as I did. So this is the last week in Parliament before the Christmas recess. This week we have something called the Professional Qualifications Bill, which I doubt many people have heard of. It's about actually regularising overseas qualifications for people to be professionals to practice in the UK. It's a post-Brexit measure. We've got debates on the veterinary agreements, on the Northern Ireland protocols, on the national food strategy, and on animal testing. Lots of events in Parliament actually being cancelled. No parties this week. I'm not going to go there on parties. I've written something on my Facebook page. Home Affairs Select Committee is meeting twice this week. We had a really interesting session with the Max Hill, the Director of Public Prosecutions, on our inquiry into the very low conviction rate for rapes. And later today we have Rachel McLean, the Home Office Minister responsible, in front of us as well. I've been temporarily chairing the Home Affairs Select Committee because Yvette Cooper, the former chair, has been promoted to Shadow Home Secretary. Today will be my last session as chair doing that. I got meetings with carers organisations about unpaid carers this week. I've got a roundtable on fraud with the Securities Minister, big issue around cyber security there. Later in the week I shall be visiting, always a joy too, the Dogs Trust Centre at Shoreham to catch up with how they've been getting on. I got briefings on Friday with the CCG about how the vaccination rollout is going, and I'll do a posting over the weekend on that to bring people up to date. I've got a meeting with an envoy from Yemen, because I chair the Yemen group, to see about the continuing really drastic humanitarian crisis in Yemen. And I think the rest of the weekend I'm going to be out delivering Christmas cards. You'll see me around the streets somewhere. I'm hoping to go on Sunday to the Findon Valley, their Christmas farmers market. Been very successful with their new farmers market over there. So I will probably put out a small post next week, but I hope everybody has a good Christmas. And I just want to congratulate everybody responsible for last Friday night's Light Up Shoreham. It really was fantastic. Great to see people out at last enjoying themselves. The lanterns in St Mary's Churchyard I thought were absolutely fantastic, and it was really good that we had Matt, who some may remember, a violinist who was assaulted in Shoreham, and there was a collection to buy him a new violin, and he was out in force with his talents on Friday night, which was really good. So I'm going to leave you with some of his music. But if I don't speak to people before Christmas, have a good and hopefully COVID-free and safe Christmas, everybody, and a happier New Year than I think probably most would agree 2021 has been.